morning. My name is Elizabeth Leon. I am 17, currently a senior at Sunnyside High School. Raised for 12 years in a crowded 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment with more than 20 other people was completely normal to me. Most of them were alcoholics, including my own father, but I am very optimistic. I was just blessed and grateful for having both of my parents. I was raised in a low-income family. My parents are field workers. I have worked in the fields for 8 years. At the age of 9 while working in the olives, a tractor ran me over. Luckily, it ran over my legs and not my upper body. For the month I was on crutches, I still managed to go to school. I have always shown commitment to school. I was a top student throughout elementary, not because I was lucky. I worked hard to achieve that. It was difficult getting assistance in a household full of adults who only spoke Spanish. The place I called home was not a distraction, but a motivation to pursue my educational goals. What I didn't have for many years was an adult mentor and enough money to help me buy extra books. My parents didn't know about local libraries, and I found out about them until the 7th grade. During my freshman year, I found a program like many of you here work with. It was the Boys and Girls Club. The Boys and Girls Club encourages me to keep pursuing my educational goals and has provided me with an adult mentor who knew how to get me from point A to Z. Now I have dreams that I can make happen. I know I can make them happen. My goals are to graduate from Sunnyside High School, be the first adolescent in my family to attend and graduate from an Ivy League school, adopt an orphan, and become a musician at Carnegie Hall. But my ultimate goal is to help other youth like me. I want to thank all of you for being here today and for helping kids and families like mine. Thank you.
Was that not impressive? This young lady, 17 years old, and the poise that she has to stand up in front of this group of 400 plus people and tell her story. I wish that I could have her come to juvenile delinquency court and talk to every child that goes through, because she is an absolute inspiration and the future of our community. Good morning, everyone. I know a lot of people in the room. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kimberly Gabe. I am the juvenile delinquency presiding judge for Fresno County Superior Court. I'm also the chair of the Interagency Council. It was my pleasure to work on Workgroup 2, and I want to tell you a little bit before we get to the presentation about Workgroup 2 and who was on it and where we landed. Workgroup 2 is the collaborative justice folks for the most part. So that's in addition to the court, that is probation, that is law enforcement, including the Fresno Police Department and the Fresno Sheriff, among others. It is our mental health treatment providers, our youth development leadership. We had educators, but the educators tended to be those dealing with juvenile delinquents. So the folks on this group were the folks that actually saw our most challenged and troubled youth in Fresno County. These are the kids that have no future. And we spent a lot of time. We met from, I believe we started in June, and we met about every other week at the Juvenile Justice Campus, which is where it all takes place, where all the juvenile delinquent programs, and that's where they serve custody. So we met and we talked and we argued and we disagreed, and we went back and forth on what each of us thought were the problem areas. And we talked about the huge gang problems that we have in Fresno County. We talked about the huge gun problems that we have in Fresno County. I see it every day. Children who are charged with possession of a firearm or discharge of a firearm. We talked about substance abuse, alcohol abuse, drug abuse. Methamphetamine is a huge, huge problem in this community, and it's only getting worse with our youth. I rarely see a child come into court and read a report where there's no drug use. It starts with marijuana and it graduates to more significant drugs, one of the worst of which is methamphetamine. So we talked and we disagreed and we went back and forth, but in the end, we all kept coming back to one topic: education. These kids are not educated. I don't have children in the juvenile delinquency system who are doing well in school. Most of them aren't in school. I don't have children who are straight A's who have substance abuse problems. Law enforcement officers aren't dealing with gang members who are doing well in school, who are enrolled in school. So we landed on education. But where do you start with education? Do we start when they're in high school? That's pretty late. We spend a lot of money per youth trying to work with children in high school that haven't had proper education. So we went back and we landed on 3rd grade reading levels. Because when you look at the data, that's where it all seems to start. 3rd grade reading levels. Education, I tell kids, is the opportunity for them. Crime is a symptom of desperation. So with that, I want to introduce Mary Jane Skellerup. She is with the Youth Leadership Institute, and she's going to go through some of the data, hopefully with a separate microphone. Thank you, Judge. Hopefully I'm not causing any liability by doing this.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, everyone. It was just an honor to be able to participate in this endeavor over the last few months, particularly under the leadership of Judge Gabe and all of our work group team members. So why 3rd grade reading? What does that mean to those of us in the room? Well, just today, this very moment, we have 14,675 3rd graders in Fresno County. Less than half of them are currently proficient in reading. That means we have 8,072 7- and 8-year-olds right now, today, who are unable to read. We know from the research and the data that 1 in 6 of those kids will not graduate from high school. In 10 years, we're looking at 1,292. Right now, they're children, 7 and 8 years old, who are probably not going to graduate from high school, potential high school dropouts. Imagine this if we do nothing over 10 years, and the 13,000 children who we did nothing to save. So how does this connect to juvenile justice, right? Well, when you don't learn to read and get that basic competence in literacy, and you go up through high school, and you can't make it, you drop out, your career opportunities are limited. How many of us in the room are able to do our jobs without the ability to read or write? Well, there is one equal opportunity employer, and that's crime. Across the U.S., we have 85% of juveniles who interface with the juvenile court system are functionally illiterate. Our judge right here sees it every day.
And if I could add quickly, one of the standard terms and conditions of probation when you're on juvenile probation is to write a 3-page essay about character counts. We have the young people write about pillars of character, and they turn it into their probation officer. We talk about it in court, and a couple of weeks ago, this is not uncommon, I went through the terms and conditions and I asked the young person if he had any questions, and he said, yes, I do. He said, I have to do an essay. And I said, yes, probation's going to give you more information about that essay. Don't worry about it. You have several weeks to do it. He said, but I don't know how to read or write. He was 16. 16 years old.
Illiteracy isn't a problem of the past in America. It's still happening right here, right now, today. We know we have 8,000 children who are supposed to be ready to read, who are not, in Fresno County. However, if we're able to help all children learn to read and be on that pathway towards literacy, we know that our recidivism rates will drop from 70% to only 16% if we can get folks help. What does that mean to all of us? We have 11,542 young people incarcerated in 2010. Probably about 10 years worth of third graders. At the cost of $1.1 billion annually, and we're charging ourselves $250,000 per year for every child that we decide to lock up. So, what are the things that influence third grade literacy? These are the predictive factors, right? So sitting in this room today, we may not all work with 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds and all the years before, but there are different things that we know can help us tackle this issue of third grade reading. We know that our young people need to be in school in order to learn. We need to think about the ways that we help support families get their children to school. We need to think about transportation. We need to think about the quality of our air. We need to think about the type of health care, dental care that we're able to receive so the children aren't missing school. And we also need to think about the things that our schools can do to better support young people while they're there, and how all the rest of us can get behind our schools to make sure that we're helping every child learn to read. Everybody can be a part of this effort. For example, the Youth Leadership Institute and a lot of our youth development partners in the room, we're privileged to work with some of the finest young people in this community, young people just like Elizabeth here who you met. There are so many young people who we don't get the chance to work with because they're already working with Judge Gabe and her partners. But what we can do is work together with our young people so that they can make sure that they're lifting up the importance of literacy in our community for everyone, so that we can make sure important institutions like our libraries have the resources they need to be successful in addressing this issue. We want to make sure that our schools are being supported, that we make sure that we're asking for high-quality education, and that we're ensuring that our discipline policies at our schools are not turning around and sending back home children who should be there ready to learn, particularly our young people. Particularly those children we know are struggling the most because they're dealing with these types of things in our neighborhoods. Neighborhoods that are saturated with liquor stores, check cashing centers, jails, and slum housing. But working together, we can turn it around so that we have more preschools, parks, health clinics, and good transportation in those same neighborhoods right here in Fresno County. We need to do this, and we can. And if we do, we can take this this graph, and we can make sure that we turn it around so that it's pointing upwards. Right now, in Fresno County, of those 7 and 8-year-olds in third grade, only 45% of our Asian students are proficient and on target to read. Only 36% of our Latino children are reading proficiently. And only 32% of our African American children, our 7 and 8-year-old children, are proficient in reading. If we're able to turn this around, we're going to be able to see those children grow up into young men and young women, particularly our boys of color. They'll be able to get their diplomas walking across the stage at the Save Mart Center or Selland Arena instead of walking through the halls of Wasco, Corcoran, and God forbid, San Quentin. If we're able to have our young people read and write, we'll be able to give them more opportunities to get connected to other programs at school and outside of school, so they're not turning to alcohol and drugs and gangs for support systems. Things that don't require reading in order to consume or participate in. If we're able to bring our reading levels up, we know that we'll be able to reduce young people who are being arrested for felonies, and those who just feel completely disengaged from our system that's supposed to support them the most. We can do this. And if we haven't convinced you about, the heart of the matter and why it's important to make sure that we're not condemning 7- and 8-year-olds to a life of incarceration and crime, then let's run the numbers, right? Before we show that it costs $250,000 to incarcerate a young person. Today, we know that if we're able to teach these young people to read, so they can go on to graduate from high school and get great careers, for each child, we will see an additional $290,000 in earnings per graduate. We know that we will see, per child, an extra $100,000 in local, state, and federal taxes. And for Fresno County, right here at home, we'll see $53,000 per child in economic benefits to our county, per child. So of those 1,292 children that are 7 and 8 years old today, if we invest in them and help them get on track to read and progress in life, we're going to see $53,000 per each one of them, right here at home in Fresno County. And across California, that equals $390,000 in returns to our state per child. We know that if we teach our children the most basic skills to help them be the most productive adults they can be, reading and writing, that we're going to give them every opportunity to succeed.
And I want to add, by the time a child ends up in juvenile delinquency court, which they're typically a teenager in high school, I don't want to say that it's too late, because the job of the juvenile delinquency court is to rehabilitate the child. And we spend a lot of resources and a lot of time and a lot of effort to do that. But the amount of money that it costs this community to rehabilitate a teenager who's either in the juvenile delinquency system or who has dropped out of high school is extraordinary. When you look at if we can address it at 3rd grade, that'll make all the difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Mary Jane. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to